Hello, everybody. I'm Pasha Marlowe, the host of Neuroqueering. And today, I say this often, I'm excited to have this guest, but today I'm extremely excited to have this guest because I've been admiring Sonny Jane Wise's work on social media now for over a year. And their work has really not only inspired part of my work, but challenged how I think about neurodiversity and neurodivergence in a brilliant way that I don't think anybody else could have done because they do it through color and art and wisdom in just a very creative way. So, welcome, lived experience educator, advocate, writer of the new upcoming book, The Neurodivergent Umbrella, Sonny Jane Wise. Welcome.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So, Australia, you're in Australia, right?
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
which always shocks people, surprisingly enough.
Where do they think you're from?
I'm not sure, but I assume it's because I have such an erratic sleep pattern that they just assume in another time zone.
Okay. Well, you're in another world and time zone of your own. I'm all the way over here in Maine, United States, and so yes, we're in completely different sides of the world, different seasons, but very much aligned in our passion for reaching out to everyone about the neurodiversity paradigm and the difference between neurodiversity and neurodivergence, which I know that
Oof.
you, oh, oof, we might as well just start there because I feel like I don't want to say correct people. I feel like I have this discussion with people every day, and
Oh,
sometimes it
yeah.
becomes an argument. And literally, what I hear is people would rather be called because it sounds better neurodiverse than neurodivergent. That's the entirety of their argument.
That is exactly what it comes down to. And like to the point, people will actually say that it doesn't matter, what it used to mean. It matters, what it means now. And it's like, but it doesn't mean that now. The definition of diverse hasn't changed. The definition of neurodiverse or neurodiversity has not changed. You're just using it wrong.
Thank you. Yes, exactly. So let's just start there. What is your definition of neurodiversity?
Oh,
Of a term, by the way, coined by supposedly by Judy Singer, whereas neurodivergent is a term coined by, I hope I pronounced her name right, Kasane Asum, uh, Asu Asasumasu.
yeah, no, perfect. Yeah,
Oh, okay, okay.
did
So go ahead.
good. Well,
Neurodiversity.
obviously, my definition of neurodiversity is Judy Singer's definition of neurodiversity.
Go figure.
And neurodiversity is just a biological fact that, refers to the variance of human minds, like within our society. It basically just refers to how, people and their minds are diverse, just like, nature is diverse, just like
Mhm.
gender is diverse, just like our sexuality or our cultures are diverse. Just
Mhm.
refers to the variance in a population or group, and that population is human society.
I'm noticing that nowhere in that definition did you say brain.
Yeah. So,
Interesting.
funnily enough, I actually had a conversation with Judy Singer for a couple of weeks ago, and Judy Singer like finds that brains doesn't really sum it up because obviously, even if you ignore neurodiversity, every single brain is different. There is no one brain that is exactly the same. What Judy Singer means is that when we say mind, we mean like, the way we function, that, every single person functions differently. And I know Judy Singer believes that the mind body is kind of more of an accurate term than brain,
Mhm.
purely
Mhm.
because people are not their brains.
Yes.
People are way more than their brains. So,
Yes.
yes, I'm moving away from saying brains.
Mind body. I like that. And
Yeah.
and then in turn, how do you define neurodivergent?
Well, I know this definition off by heart. Neurodivergent refers to someone whose mind or functioning diverges from dominant societal norms, expectations, and standards.
You do have that by heart. It's as if you wrote
Say
a
it
book
so many
about it.
times.
Yes. And again, no mention of brain. So it's a very societal view. So the difference when people describe neurodivergence as a difference in brains, that's not fully the whole story and not accurate.
Yeah, because it's just so much more than brains.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we're gonna say like brains so many
I
times. Like,
know.
just not. Is this like a podcast about zombies? But no, like it's because it's got to do with our functioning. It's got nothing to do with like the inside of our brains. Purely because I think as well, so much of our neurodivergence is based on observable differences in behavior.
Yes.
And we don't have enough of that science, I guess, to be like, yeah, this person's brain is entirely different. We can assume, we can guess by someone's differences in functioning, but we don't have that clear cut, this is what this brain does, this is what this brain does.
Yeah.
And as well, we also can't ignore the fact that there's neuro. So people automatically assume neuro means brain,
Mhm.
whereas, it actually doesn't. And so, yeah, people get caught up on that prefix.
Neuro means mind or nervous. Neuro means nervous system. What do you, what is it? What is
Mind body. So
mind body?
the mind and the body together, like all of it.
Okay. Yes, and when I think about my neurodivergence, ADHD, autism, dyslexia, PTSD, I could probably name more, multiply neurodivergent, how much I embody it, how much it comes out in my movement, in my relations with others, uh, and so it would be very challenging for me to think of this specifically about how I think because to your point, it is not, it is how we
Yeah.
move and interact with the world.
Yeah. And I feel like as well, a lot of people kind of base what is neurodivergent based on like how your brain is wired. So often they can use that whole brain argument to invalidate or dismiss certain neurodivergence. Like obviously, we know for autism and ADHD, our brains are literally wired differently. But if there isn't that, common argument or proof for other neurodivergences, they're like, oh, it doesn't count. But it's like, it doesn't matter how your brain is wired. It doesn't matter if there's proof that your brain is different. It's all about how you function.
Yes, yes. And some neurodivergence is innate and
Yeah.
some is acquired, or would you say even learned? I think about Nick Walker's work, and she talks about in Neuroqueer heresies, uh, monks and those that meditate and change their brain so that it does diverge from the social norm, but it's learned. Do you see that in the neurodivergent umbrella as well?
I think so. Especially, I think it's the fact that, don't just function differently, but they think differently, they feel differently, they
Hmm.
meditate differently.
Hmm.
I mean,
Hmm.
even technically speaking, left-handedness that could be classed as neurodivergence too, purely because especially throughout history, right-handedness has been was the norm. Most things have been built for people who use their right hand, and obviously right-handedness and left-handedness has like different features in the brain or something like that.
Hmm.
So like, that's a good example. Another example would be, giftedness.
Yeah.
While I'm not like 100% for the term, obviously, giftedness refers to individuals who have like a really high IQ.
Mhm.
They fall outside the norm to the point that they think differently. So
Yes.
therefore, they're also neurodivergent. Mind you, they're not neurodivergence that has been pathologized by society, but they do think differently.
Yes. Yes. And what is your perspective on trauma? Those folks with trauma, how trauma changes the brain. Do you consider trauma neurodivergence?
Oh, absolutely. purely based on the fact that they function differently. They
Hmm.
interpret the world differently. They approach relationships differently. They have emotional differences.
Yes.
They process memories differently. How they function or how they interpret and move through the world is different to the norm. It doesn't matter, how they came to diverge. It just matters that they do diverge.
Yes, which leads me to one of the questions I've been very much excited to ask you. If we're including all of this under the umbrella, which I agree with, and I don't know anyone who hasn't experienced trauma, for example, is are we diverging from the norm, or is it going to turn out that most people are neurodivergent, but then how can we be all or so many of us be neurodivergent if we're diverging from the norm? But then how could we not be the norm if so many people most people have had trauma? Do you see where I'm going with this?
I get this question a lot. And obviously, it's a really valid question. And we need this question because it proves that there is no such thing as normal.
Exactly.
There is no such thing as normal. However, there is such thing as, I guess, neuronormativity. There is
Mhm.
such thing as, socially constructed ideas of how people should function.
Yes.
Same way how, there isn't a normal gender, but there is a gender, cisgender, that, has been catered to throughout society, that is centered throughout society. And the same goes for functioning.
I love that you reframed it that way, that it's about neuronormativity, just as we see heteronormativity and the social constructs of gender. And so if we're looking at it from we're diverging from the normativity, that makes more sense to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. And then what about you mentioned pathologizing, the pathologizing language of neurodivergence, for example, ADHD disorder, at the end of that, ASD, autism spectrum disorder, and that if I say I am autistic, that feels true. If I say I am ADHD, I don't I don't like that I'm saying I am disorder, even though I want to non-pathologize my languaging around my identity. So
Yeah.
yeah.
It's hard because obviously, so many of these labels that we have embraced and have, reframed, you know, uh, is still based on the pathology paradigm. It's still based on the concept of disorder. So, for a lot of words, for a lot of labels and diagnoses, disorder is built into the term. For example, with autism spectrum disorder, you can get away with dropping the D and saying autism. Same with, bipolar disorder, you can drop the D and just say bipolar. ADHD, we can't do that.
Right.
And I know, different people have started suggesting different names, like I think one of them's, vast.
Fast.
I don't
Mhm.
like that. I don't
Mhm.
like that.
Mhm.
Purely because it's like, oh crap, what is it? All I know is it ends in trait. And I don't like that purely because it implies that it's a single trait rather
Yes.
a spectrum or something. So yeah,
Yes.
I don't like the name vast. There's someone else who suggested another name, and I also don't like that.
It's funny because
um,
I don't assimilate them and retrieve them either because I
I'm not
don't
attached to him.
attach them. Yeah, I didn't
Yeah.
integrate it. Yes.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
made a joke last night on my Instagram about removing the two Ds from ADHD, removing deficit and disorder.
Yes.
So then
Ah.
it'll just be attention hyperactivity. And then it'll just be, and then we can all introduce ourselves as,
Or we could reverse that and go, ha, just be, and bring in the laughter.
Yes.
Exactly. Yes. I have heard that one of the reasons why there isn't a big push to change the labeling of ADHD and other disorders, if you will, is because of the disability acts and some of the privileges that have now come, and accommodations that have come because of the name and some of the laws that have been created, and that it would be messy. Now, of course, it's already messy, but it's interesting that that's the reason that I'm often given when I ask.
Yeah,
Why?
it's hard because it's, we do exist in a society that is rooted in the pathology paradigm that,
Mhm.
revolves around the DSM,
Yes.
university, workplaces, government services, insurance, access to mental health, it all
Mhm.
revolves around the DSM.
Yes.
So, we are stuck having this paradigm, give us, the services and access to support and accommodations and proof that we need. But, I think it's also possible to acknowledge the reality of this, but then still, emphasize that we aren't disordered, that we don't have a disorder.
Mhm. Mhm. Yes. I mean, when you mentioned the DSM, I really am now wondering, I'm thinking about white supremacy and capitalism, of course,
It's all made up.
and the patriarchy. Like, who made this shit up, and who wrote it, and who determined that this was the Bible of,
Yeah.
you know? Yeah.
Well, funny story. We
Mm.
don't have to go too deep into DSM because I could speak about that for hours. But basically, and I'm gonna like paraphrase so much, but basically at the beginning, they like when psychiatry came about, they psychiatry were kind of like seen as quacks. They were seen as not real doctors, not real medicine. The medical community around them just didn't see them as valid. So they realized that psychiatry realized that they had to basically create a book to prove what they were saying. They needed to create a book so people would believe them that, mental disorders were a real thing. So they ended up creating this DSM. And what I like to say is, haven't we learned not to believe everything we've read? Um, and so it escalated from there. There's actually no scientific basis in the DSM. It was just used so psychiatry could get money and prove themselves to the medical community that they were valid. It's all
Yes.
lies.
Right. Oh my gosh, we just have to keep following the money, and going upstream and seeing who's in charge here and
Yeah. And as
why.
well, like the DSM, went from like 30 disorders to like 300 within a few years, purely because they had to keep adding stuff for, to make money and to profit and everything.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, they did actual, a lot of research or studies into these valid disorders. And I hope everyone knows that I'm using
There's
quotation
big
marks.
quotes for those that are
Yeah.
listening. Yes.
So it's not like it was valid. It's just it's all made up. And if you actually go into the history of the DSM, you can see how so many of the quotation marks disorders are rooted in capitalism and white supremacy and racism.
Yes. Yes. In the late 1900s, when I was a marriage and family therapist working with the DSM, because that's what I was trained to do, and that was seemingly the way to that was all I was taught. And yet innately and intuitively, it felt so wrong to look at people, to be with humans in all of their beautiful forms and sit with a family, and then look for this family to one diagnosis, which had a code, which meant they'd get 10 sessions, which meant the insurance would cover it, that I would like somehow take all of the dynamics of this one family and bring it into this like few words or this code. It felt wrong from the start. So I left the profession, from that alone. I just felt intuitively wrong, and it's still how people are doing it. It's still how it works. It's
Yeah.
really a shame. I read today, and I can't remember who said it, but they were talking about gatekeeping. Are you neurodivergent enough to be called neurodivergent? Are you neurodivergent enough to receive these accommodations? And one of her, and she mentioned the umbrella. And I don't know if did you coin the term neurodivergent umbrella?
I don't know. Hadn't seen neurodivergent referred to as an umbrella for commonly.
Okay.
I do know I was the one that created like the first neurodivergent umbrella graphic that actually was accurate. And the reason I did is because I'd seen a few other
Yes.
graphics that listed examples of neurodivergence that, only listed the, top four.
Yes, you
So
included a lot of the mental health, terms, and that was very helpful. I use that graphic often. I refer to it.
thank you. I think it's
Um,
honestly my most popular graphic ever.
yes, yes. So this woman I was reading a post from today was saying, let's do less gatekeeping. Let's stop building gates and hold more umbrellas. Was the final line, right?
I
Uh,
love that.
isn't that nice? And I had just these visions of everyone holding colorful, of course, rainbow colored umbrellas, and just like, this is an inclusive term, people. Neurodivergent is an inclusive term, and that there's a lot of gatekeeping within and outside the community as to like who can
Oh,
be
yeah.
called neurodivergent, and if you don't have a diagnosis from a psychiatrist, are you sure? Are you sure you're neurodivergent? And I highly value self-diagnoses, especially as we get older, because we know ourselves so well. And frankly, we research the shit out of things, right? Because we are
Oh,
curious, and
absolutely.
right?
And just the fact that, some people just believe that, individuals with certain diagnoses can't actually can't know themselves. And it's like, so you literally believe that people with, certain mental health conditions or certain neurodevelopmental conditions can't know themselves. That's an indication of how they think and view someone with, like,
Exactly.
a mental health condition. They think we're lacking insight, or that we're blinded by our quotation marks disorder, that we can't know ourselves at all. I'm like, that ableism in that kind of assumption is just ridiculous.
Agreed. And so what is your dream, your vision outside of publishing this book? And I'm it's going to be wildly successful, and then you'll be asked to write many more after it, to dig into probably some of the issues within the book. But what is your vision for the future of the neurodiversity paradigm and the neurodivergent umbrella? What do you hope to see in your lifetime?
Oh God. Um, Honestly, I would like to see every like professional adopt the neurodiversity paradigm.
Hmm.
I would like to see workplaces adopt a neurodiversity paradigm. I like to see schools adopt it. I would like to see the neurodiversity paradigm be like a, year-long unit or subject within,
Mm,
degrees.
yes.
I would like it to be like a view adopted by society.
Yes, yes. Less with less pathologizing, and more not just awareness, but and not just acceptance, but really celebration of it as well. Yeah, there's in the ADHD community, often I hear people saying, stop calling it a superpower because it'll diminish our struggles. Stop saying we're spicy because we want to acknowledge like the true challenges, and we want people to understand the
Oh,
challenges.
I hate neurospicy.
I'm
I
so
don't
glad
like
you
it.
said that. I'm so glad you said that. Like, why? Because it sounds better. Again, is
It
it because
sounds
it
more
sounds?
palatable. It sounds less, it's similar to saying differently abled. That's how it
Mhm.
feels to me. You're not
Mhm.
neurodivergent, you're neurospicy. You're not disabled, you're differently abled. It's just a
Mhm.
way of making it sound better, to, because, we're still so caught up on this idea that diverging is bad.
Right. Right. And yet, those who accept their divergence also accept and really appreciate thinking outside the box in all the ways. I think about how so many people I know who have come out neurodivergent, and start to unmask and start to really embrace this part of themselves, also then come out in all the different other ways, such as coming out queer. Like they're fine. Of course, it was always this way, but then they were starting to unmask and reveal their truth and be
Yeah,
able
they're
to
getting
step.
rid of those boxes.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're
yeah.
stepping out of those boxes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I just feel like it happens simultaneously sometimes, that people step out of those boxes in many ways, and then it kind of unfolds in such a beautiful way that, and often it's causes some kind of chaos initially of they lose people who don't like who they are when they're speaking their mind and when they're speaking their truth and when they're unmasked. And then they gain, even more importantly, all these wonderful, colorful, neurodivergent, creative people in their circles. And that's such a beautiful transition to watch.
Yeah, no, it really is. And I think, that's kind of also part of the importance of moving towards a society that accepts and embraces the neurodiversity paradigm. Because when we can do that, we are making room for people to unmask and be themselves and diverge without shame or judgment. And if we do move towards that kind of society where people are allowed to diverge and we don't pathologize people because they diverge, we're going to have a whole lot less trauma. We're going to have a whole lot less people growing up viewing themselves as broken or abnormal or unwell.
Yes. Yes. That let's end on that. That is truth and a beautiful vision for the future. When is your book coming out?
I have no idea. I believe it is this year. It
Okay.
should be probably from I'll go August onwards. So
August. Okay.
second half of the year.
Okay. Well, standing room only lines around the world, I'm sure, to find that book when it comes out. Until then, I know people can reach you on Instagram and TikTok, Lived Experience Educator. Are there other places that you play?
I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and occasionally TikTok. I haven't really caught up with the TikTok game. I don't think I'll ever catch up with a TikTok game, but I'm on there.
Okay, you're doing fantastic with the resources you have and the social media platforms are just so well done. So I encourage anyone who's listening to follow Sonny and you probably don't want a bunch of people emailing you and reaching out to you otherwise, but if they were to reach out to you and want to ask you a question, do you receive questions or do you receive, I don't know, do you take clients or do you not really do that? What do you do?
Yeah, I take questions.
Okay.
Whether I answer them or not depends.
Depends on the
But
question.
yeah, I do take questions, and yeah, I do take. I don't see like clients individually, but
Okay.
I do workshops and the occasional consultation and all that. So you can always email and just see what's happening.
Email and just hope that
Hope
it's
for the best. I
interesting and
do.
on a day that you feel like answering it. Right.
Yeah.
I love it. You make that so clear and it's really very boundaried and as well as endearing when I read your
Thank
your
you.
your website. I was like, yes, that feels so good to read. I was just
I'm just
resonating.
keeping it real.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, once we unmask, ooh, it would be
Yeah,
exhausting to go back into the box and mask again. So here we are.
exactly.
Well, thank you so much, Sunny, for your time. I know it's very early there. I hope you have a wonderful day there, and I hope our paths cross again.
No, that's okay. Thank you for having me. You are a very comfortable host.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Well, it's a pleasure. And I don't know who out there is listening because we're talking to the void, but hopefully, if you enjoyed this podcast, it would be very helpful if you subscribe and review and do all those things, but also share it so that other people can learn about the neurodivergent umbrella and the differences between neurodiversity and neurodivergence and follow Sunny's work. And yeah, let us know what you thought of this conversation. So excited you're here neuroqueering with us. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.